Hello everyone, welcome back to 40 Days with Dietrich. Hopefully you have been enjoying these reflections, and hopefully you've been enjoying these readings. Whether you get something out of my rambling or not, I hope that you are able to sit with the words of Bonhoeffer throughout the day. Today's passage is again taken from Discipleship. Again, we will get to other books, but it's from Discipleship. The title given to this excerpt is Grace and Faith. Dietrich writes, "If we ourselves understand our first step as a precondition for grace, for faith, then we are judged by our own works and completely cut off from grace. It is but a new possibility for living within our old existence, and thereby a complete misunderstanding. We remain in unbelief. But the external works have to take place. We have to get into the situation of being able to believe. We have to take the step. What does that mean? It means that we take this step in the right way only when we do not look to the necessity of our works, but solely with a view to the word of Jesus Christ, which calls us to take the step. Peter knows that he cannot climb out of the boat by his own power. His first step would already be his downfall. And so he calls, "Command me to come to you out on the water." Christ answers, "Come." Christ has to have called. The step can be taken only at his word. This call is his grace, which calls us out of death into the new life of obedience. So it is indeed the case that the first step of obedience is itself an act of faith in Christ's word. I've always loved the story of Peter walking on the water. I think it's so instructive. It's so wonderful. And there's so many different ways that you can enter into that story and just meditate on it and reflect on it. But in all the times that I've read it, and all the times that I've preached on it, and all the times that I've sat with that story, I've never thought about what Bonhoeffer brings out here, that Christ had to create the situation. Christ had to call Peter out of the boat. Christ had to call that first step out of Peter. And I love the point that if Peter had just kind of jumped out of the boat, that would have been his downfall, because he doesn't create it himself. Because faith and grace isn't based only on what we can do. And let's be honest, Peter's kind of a shoot from the hip, brash, leap before I think kind of person. It was entirely conceivable that Peter would have possibly just jumped out on the boat and tried to walk on the water. But Christ had to call first. Sometimes in theology we talk about what comes first. How does grace interact with our works? And Bonhoeffer here puts the two together in a lovely way. But grace is that call to action. A professor of mine used to say that God calls. So Christ calls, we respond, and then Christ responds to our response. So Jesus is always calling us to himself. Follow me, follow me, follow me. We read that all the time throughout the scriptures, throughout the Gospels. But it's not the case that we can then just sit and do nothing, right? We do have to act. We do have to obey. In Bonhoeffer's words, we do have to take the step. The call to discipleship, the call to obedience, is this call to new life. It's this call to taking steps to Jesus and with Jesus. And if we don't take that step, then we have to ask ourselves, are we truly hearing that call? I love how the challenge is there. The challenge is not, is Jesus actually calling us? Because Bonhoeffer would say he is. This is the call of his grace. His grace is the call into new life. It is the call into obedience. It's the call to take a steps further toward him and with him. And so what we reflect on today and in our Christian lives and in our journey through Lent is, where is Jesus calling you to take maybe a first step, maybe a next step? But where is Jesus calling you to act, to obey, to do? Not with an eye focused on, well, this is how great I'm going to be in faith, this is how great I'm going to do, but with an eye only on his presence, only on Jesus, as we continually make steps toward him. God bless you in your Lenten journey, and I'll see you tomorrow.